I think it was just believing that anything is possible when it comes to wealth. And like I said, I really surrounded myself intentionally with people who were doing big things financially. And I think so often we're in a group of people where everyone is the same as us.
How did you push through that fear? Because that's one of the biggest moves you can make, is going to a different country across the world entirely.
It helped that I wasn't happy living where I was living. And so I was basically chasing, a new type of happiness. And I was chasing a dream that I thought existed in the UK. And in some ways it definitely did. But in other ways, especially initially, my quarter life crisis followed me across the pond. And so it wasn't like I snapped my fingers and all of a sudden I had all the clarity in the world or I was happy. I had to learn how to be happy, and I had to learn how to focus on my desires instead of my fear. And so having those conversations and putting yourself into the life of the person that might be doing what you want to do, taking the internship, whatever it is, getting the job for the time being, and just allowing yourself to explore all those different options, you'll get clarity so much faster than if you're just sitting there thinking about it or even journaling about it, as powerful as journaling is. If you actually get into that life, it's going to be game changing.
Welcome to the Be Better broadcast. Today we are speaking with Emily Williams. And for those who don't know Emily, Emily is a success expert, an author, a speaker, a podcast host, and a serial entrepreneur. And at one point, she couldn't get a job at Starbucks. After experiencing a quarter life crisis, she moved from Ohio to London. And in 2014, she launched her first company, I Heart My Life. She earned $442 in her first month, and then went on to hit six figures in 6 months before her 30th birthday. She grew her business into seven figures in under 18 months. Today, she educates heart-centered women all around the world in helping them bust through the obstacles that hold their dreams and goals hostage so that they can free themselves to create a life that's better than their dreams. She's also the founder of multiple brands and companies, and a mother. She's got a lot going on. Her social medias are popping. You're going to have to check her out. We'll share all those in the description. And if you remember, back in February, we spoke to a man named James Williams. And he is a peak performance coach, and he helps people to break through their obstacles as well, probably in different ways, but similar ways to Emily. And Emily is James's wife. And he was like, you got to talk to my wife. She is crushing it at the highest level. And I went to her website. I connected with her, and I was like, wow, Emily is doing it. I love people who are just doing what they can to build their own dreams while boosting other people up to helping them create their own dreams as well. And today you're going to leave with practical strategies, ideas, and philosophies that will help you to accomplish just that. So when you take away even just one thing from this conversation, all that we ask is you share this show with just one other person who could use this message as well. You are the reason the Be Better broadcast has grown the way it has over the past 3 years, because you are the best part of the Be Better team. Without further ado, Emily, all the way from Texas, soon to be back in Ohio. It's great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I loved my conversation with James. It was high energy. It was a lot of fun. And I'm excited for this one too, because you guys are on very similar wavelengths. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you actually met James after your move to London during that quarter life crisis. Is that right?
Yeah, I moved to London on a complete whim and I didn't know anyone. And so I found it easier to throw myself into the world of online dating versus trying to make girlfriends wherever you meet friends as an adult. And so I was a serial online dater, and that's how we met, on a cheesy dating website.
Cool. And look what it's become. That's awesome.
Exactly.
And if you didn't make that move, that wouldn't have happened, right? Your daughter wouldn't be here, or it'd be a different daughter. Who knows what the world would look like, right? But it just goes to show that these decisions that we make, even while they are scary, lead us to beautiful things that we could never have anticipated if we had not made them.
Completely. Yeah. And that was really one of the first moments where I realized the power of following your heart. I know that sounds obvious, but I don't think many of us are taught that strategy or that way of doing life. We're taught a very analytical, kind of step by step, do certain things in a certain order sort of way of doing things. And so for me to step that far out of the box and get that result was really eye-opening.
No doubt. Yeah, it's really inspiring. I think that's probably the best word to use. It's really inspiring to see what you've created over the past 10 years. My question for you is, seeing everything you've created and then reading in that introduction that you didn't get the job at Starbucks. It's like, what? Because I guarantee while you've grown, you've improved in your skills. I can't imagine you were too much different back then. I could be wrong. I was different 10 years ago. Like, why didn't you get the job at Starbucks? What was that all about?
That's a great question. So during that time, I had thought I was going to go to grad school and then literally was on the car, driving in the car on the way there and decided I didn't want to and turned the car around and went back to Ohio. And so I was in this place of not having any clarity, but still feeling like I was meant to do something big with my life, but having no idea what that was. So in the interim, I was just looking for random jobs kind of to make money. And I always loved Starbucks. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to try and apply to Starbucks, but they just wouldn't hire me. And I honestly have no idea why. I was a top student. Like, I was very similar to who I am today. I'm a hard worker. I was willing to do the super early morning shift, but I don't know, maybe they just didn't have any openings or what, but it just didn't happen until, 3 tries down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that happened by design, right?
Yeah.
Because what would things look like if you did get the job? They'd have a killer person on their team, but life looks very different as a result of that decision. But I'm sure at the time that probably hurt a little bit to be like, why aren't they hiring me after 3 attempts?
Totally. Yeah. So they did hire me on the 3rd try,
Okay.
and I ended up working there for a little bit. And I definitely had that feeling. And even more so when I got the job, there was one morning in particular where my dad came through the drive-through and I was there serving drinks, and he doesn't drink coffee. And so I knew that he was there just to see me, and he was completely out of his way because it was in a different part of town. And my heart just sunk because I was like, he just spent so much money on my college education. He's always believed in me. He's always thought I could do anything I could put my mind to. And here I am working at Starbucks. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it was a very different path than what he had envisioned for me and what I envisioned. And yet he was never judgmental. He was always super supportive. He always was, had my back and was there kind of side by side instead of expecting me to rush forward and be somewhere or have clarity that hadn't yet landed. But for me, because I put so much pressure on myself, that was hard to stomach. And I just felt a little bit like a failure. And it was, one of those moments that was the catalyst to, I really got to figure this out because this is not who I am and not where I want to be.
Yeah. It's funny because when you generally have thoughts of, I really need to figure this out, I'm not doing what my heart tells me I should be doing. And I know that because there's a conflict inside my body that I'm sure you felt physically as well as emotionally. When most people feel that, they get a new job, they maybe move somewhere else in the state they're in. Most people don't say, I'm going to move from Ohio to London in order to hopefully find this clarity, because you didn't know, right? You went on a whim. You had no idea what was going to happen. So how do those thoughts of I'm moving to London even form in your mind? Like, where were you at this point in your thought process?
So a few months prior, I had actually visited one of my girlfriends who was living in London. I was there with my mom and my sister because my sister was studying abroad, and we took the train to Victoria Station, which is in central London, and I stepped out of the train station into the fresh air and literally had this wave of, oh my gosh, I need to live here. It was that special and it was that clear to me. And so I kind of put a pin in that. And I started, when I got back to Ohio, I started exploring, how could that be possible? Because that's a question I always knew to ask myself. How can that be possible? Instead of just going to, oh no, I can't do that. No one in my family has ever left Ohio. This would be crazy. All of the excuses that come up and really kill off your dream before you even have a chance to explore it. I stayed in the how could this be possible? And I also recognized that that was literally the only clarity that I had at that time. And so I owed it to myself to follow it. And some of this thought processing was conscious, some of it wasn't. So I'm explaining it to you kind of looking back. But I knew it was the only thing I had clarity on. And so I started exploring how could this be possible? And so I saw that I could either marry someone who was British, which wasn't going to happen because I didn't know James yet, or I could get a student visa. And so I decided I was going to apply to different schools in the UK, and I'd always wanted to write a book. So I was like, okay, well, I'll get a degree in nonfiction writing. Again, super random, but it was the only clarity that I had. And so I took that step, ended up getting into a nonfiction writing program, got my student visa, took out a bunch of student loans to be able to make it happen, and moved myself to the UK. And that was kind of my process and my decision making at the time.
Cool. So cool. I didn't know that you could get a degree in nonfiction writing. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So I did write a book. It ended up being all about online dating. It's not the book that you see behind me that I published. But yeah, it was a bit of a memoir. I've never published it. Who knows if I will, but it got me to the UK, and it got me, obviously to meet James. And I ended up living in London for 9 years, and I got my British visa, or my passport rather. I'm a UK citizen. And so, yeah, all of that transpired because of that one decision.
What a cool memoir. So you haven't published it yet, but look at what those lessons have brought you to meeting James. I'm sure there was a lot of failed experiences between you getting there and meeting James. I mean, a lot of people could probably benefit from that. So I don't know what's in the book, but I'm sure that content might be able to help other people as well.
You're right. I might have to review it.
Reconsider,
Yeah. One of the guys, it's funny, one of the guys who I dated before James, he actually emailed me a while back, and he, this is like bringing up a lot of emotion for me, surprisingly, but he said, like, he saw the book and he was like, oh my gosh, you did it. Like, I always knew that you could do something big. And I only dated him for maybe 3 months. And I thought that was super interesting and super kind for him to even reach out, because people can see things in you that you can't always see in yourself. And I guess, that was what he experienced when we were together. And it's just really interesting, because you think you're completely lost, or you think you're one person, and there are things that people can see in you that you don't necessarily see in that moment.
No doubt. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing to get a message like that so long after. You don't realize the impact that you have on people's lives, sometimes until years later, when they tell you or they do something and they credit you for it, and you're like, wait, I didn't even know that I made that impact. That's really cool.
Exactly.
So you talk a lot about the mind and these mind traps that we can find ourselves in. And I'm going to guess that during this move, you had experienced some of those mind traps yourself. And really the question I have in regards to that is, fear is one of the largest mind traps that we find ourselves in, especially when making a career change, a relationship change, a move, whatever it is. We all experience fear, and it's what stops most people from actually making the move, whatever that is. So how did you push through that fear? Because that's one of the biggest moves you can make, is going to a different country across the world entirely.
It helped that I wasn't happy living where I was living. And so I was basically chasing, a new type of happiness. And I was chasing a dream that I thought existed in the UK. And in some ways it definitely did. But in other ways, especially initially, my quarter life crisis followed me across the pond. And so it wasn't like I snapped my fingers and all of a sudden I had all the clarity in the world, or I was happy. I had to learn how to be happy, and I had to learn how to focus on my desires instead of my fear. And I think that's what happens for most people when they fall into that trap, is like they're so fixated on the fear and all the things that could go wrong and all the reasons why they shouldn't. And they forget about the dream, and they forget about the thing that's possible for them, the possibility. And that was me. I at first was really depressed, felt really lonely, and I ended up working with somebody who was a happiness coach. And she reminded me that I didn't have to believe my mind, and I could choose to focus on the things that were going right and the things that I wanted, versus all the stuff that I was upset about or that was going wrong, or all the fears that were holding me back. And that for me was really, really game changing. And I have to say, even after going to getting a degree in psychology in undergrad, someone explaining it to me in that way changed everything, way more than all of the psychology books that I had read and studied and memorized. And I started to really apply that to my life and focus on okay, well, where are the moments every single day where things are positive, things are going right? I'm starting to see things come together. I'm starting to get more of what I want. And when you start to do that, you look at life through a completely different lens, whereas most of us are, seeing things through fear and through doubt and insecurity. And I chose to start to shift that, but it was a very deliberate decision because, again, we aren't programmed to think in that way, and the fear can be very loud and real.
Yeah, Tony Robbins always says, your brain isn't designed to make you happy. Your brain is designed to keep you alive. So that fear state is nothing to be ashamed of. That fear state is nothing to say, I wish I didn't feel this way. That's our natural primal programming to feel that way. We had to feel that way in order to survive for thousands, if not millions of years. So it's normal. But like what you just said, focus on your desires instead of your fears. And that requires retraining. That requires focus. That requires intention. What you said that really surprised me is while you were in this place after you moved across the pond, you decided to work with a happiness coach. And did you work with a coach in the past before that, or was this your first time working with a coach?
It was my first time working with a coach. Yeah.
And why did you choose to work with a coach instead of working with a therapist or a psychiatrist or something like that?
When I was
Especially
growing up,
as a psychology major, that
I know.
surprises me.
Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting. No one's ever asked me that before. So when I was growing up, my dad always had coaches. He was an entrepreneur. And so I saw that. And although they looked a little bit different, they were like men in suits carrying three ring binders. And this was like this really spiritual Australian woman and in the West End of London. And I just felt drawn to the happiness part of it because I realized that happiness was one of my biggest issues. And again, it sounds so crazy. Like, shouldn't we all be naturally happy? But I realized I didn't actually know how to be happy and I didn't know how to create joy in my life. And so that for me was the biggest issue. Of course, clarity was an issue, but happiness was like so much more important, so much deeper. And if I get to the end of my life and I'm not happy, then what has this even been about? And so for me, I just realized I had a big issue with that. And so I, did some Google searching and found this woman, and she really changed my life. And she listened to me cry for a good 6 sessions and then finally was able to interject and teach me what she taught me. But yeah, that was my first experience of directly working with a coach.
How did you know from your Google searches that this was the right person to help you?
I didn't. I mean, I think so much of what I do and the way I move through the world is instincts. And I think that that's something I was learning big time during that period of time, was trusting my gut and trusting my instincts. Even when I moved to London, I remember talking to my grandpa and he said, you're never going to know 100% if this is the right decision for you. You're just going to have to try. And I think so many people hold themselves back until they feel the 100%. And so they don't actually try. And for me, I was realizing like, this is going to be about me engaging in my life. Like during that time, I was a matchmaker. I ended up taking some media writing courses. I did my nonfiction writing, as we talked about. I was an assistant. I was a nanny. I did all of these things. I took a variety of different classes just to try stuff on for size. Anything that interested me, I explored it. And so I think that's kind of the moral of where we're at in the story, is that it was an extreme exploration for me, but I was willing to do that. Marie Forleo says clarity comes from engagement, not from thinking about it. I had spent years thinking about this and mulling it over in my head. And then finally, when I got into London, it was a lot of action and it was a lot of exploration and just seeing how things felt in my body and seeing what clicked for me.
I like that. Extreme exploration. Is that something that you'd recommend to anybody who was unsure about what it is that they want to do next? Is that one of the ways that you were able to find clarity, which eventually led to I Heart My Life?
Yeah, exactly. So when I graduated from school with the psychology degree, I thought that I was going to be going to Northwestern to get my master's in counseling psychology. And when I realized that wasn't the path for me, like I said, I was really lost. And so eventually landed on the fact that I wanted to start my own business, but I didn't know what business it was going to be. So I ended up having conversations with a bunch of different entrepreneurs who I admired, from my favorite yoga teacher to the matchmakers that I worked with to wedding planners, just to explore different types of businesses and see if they would be aligned for what I wanted to do, or what I thought I wanted to do. And so having those conversations and putting yourself into the life of the person that might be doing what you want to do, taking the internship, whatever it is, getting the job for the time being, and just allowing yourself to explore all those different options, you'll get clarity so much faster than if you're just sitting there thinking about it or even journaling about it, as powerful as journaling is. If you actually get into that life, it's going to be game changing.
And what you did was very interesting, because you worked with this coach. She helped you to really discover yourself and what your strengths were and what you wanted to do and your happiness overall. And that eventually led to I Heart My Life through these different ventures you're doing, where now you help other people, specifically women, to do that same exact thing that you struggled to do for a while and had to figure out yourself. So it's always interesting to me how it generally comes back to we're best at helping other people to do the things that we've had to overcome in the past.
Yeah, I mean, it's that turning your pain into your purpose sort of thing. And that's exactly what I did. I spent years struggling and unsure of what my next steps were, and realized once I figured it out that I could help other people, because most people don't know how to be happy. Most people don't know how to get clarity. Most people are following the path that's been laid out before them, whether it was originally their path or their parents' path or whoever's it was. And so, yeah, that was a big catalyst for me starting I Heart My Life. It says it in the title, right? I Heart My Life. And I personally did not know how to love my life, did not know how to be happy, did not know how to get this clarity. But once I figured it out, I knew I had to share it with other people.
So let's talk about I Heart My Life. And I want to really nerd out on it. I want to ask you about the very beginning, because I started Be Better Industries in 2019 and I had no clue what I was doing. Still to this day, there are times where I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And then I look at everything that I've done and I'm like, okay, this is great. We're on the right path. Keep moving forward. So the very beginning of I Heart My Life, how much clarity did you have of what you wanted it to look like? And you said your first month you made $442. That's actually a giant accomplishment that you even made $1 in your first month. So can you tell me about the beginning days of that entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, so I actually had a lot of clarity. And the reason why this is coming up is because I've been kind of coming full circle. So the brand has taken on a lot of iterations, a lot of programs, a lot of types of ideal clients. And when I look back to the first the birth of the brand, I have this little video that I made where I got all my friends to send me some pictures and some video footage, and I put it together into this video compilation. Now, the whole point of it was because I was trying to win a spot in Marie Forleo's B School when she was giving away scholarships, and there was this video contest. Long story short, I didn't win, but I have this video that really encapsulates what the brand was always meant to be. And that for me was exactly what I just described, a place where women can come to learn how to fall in love with themselves and their lives. Now, we can get to this in a second, but the thing that happened as I started to move forward was that more and more people were actually asking me how I built my coaching business, because things started to take off so quickly. And what that did was kind of sent me down a path of working with coaches and ending up being a business coach. And I've been really great at that over the last 10 years. But what I've realized is that that's not actually what I Heart My Life is meant to be. And so like I said, I've been coming full circle and trying to get back to the truth of the brand. And I'm realizing I actually had way more clarity than I give myself credit for when I first started. And it was very obvious to me what this was meant to be. Wow. But then we moved down a little bit of a different path, which is fine. That sometimes happens. And so we're really coming back to the truth of the brand.
What's up, Be Better family? It's Brandon Eastman here. And as a thank you for tuning in to the Be Better broadcast, I want to give you a very special gift. For a limited time, you can get a free digital copy of my book titled Be Extraordinary, Your Guide to Self-Mastery. This book is packed with insights and actionable steps that will help you to unlock your fullest potential in the 5 key areas of your life. But that's not all. Along with the book, I also want to give you the audiobook version absolutely free. Imagine having the power to transform your life right at your fingertips and in your ears anytime, anywhere. Go grab your copy at bebetterindustries.com/book. You'll also find the link in the episode show notes. Go and grab your copy and join me in making a positive impact on the world. Now back to the show. At the very beginning, how did you go about acquiring your first clients? Was it people you knew already? Did you market yourself online? Like, what did that look like at the very beginning?
Yeah, so I set up a website very quickly. I ended up getting a photo shoot. I worked with Marie Forleo in B School. I ended up signing up for that program on the payment plan.
Cool.
And so I took that process and started to do the steps. And so I did start to outreach to people in my, I was already connected to, so friends and family, letting them know that I was doing this. And I actually joined another program as well to help me get the business off the ground. And my husband actually lent me his credit card to sign up for that program.
Wow.
And it was through that program that I actually started to get a lot more traction because I started to network more. I started to, my coach started to tell people about me because I started to do really well. But yeah, those first initial months was all outreach. It was all clients who I met in Facebook groups. Facebook groups were a big thing then, and you were allowed to promote yourself in those groups. So somebody who I had a call with, she actually ended up signing up with the coach that I hired later on. But she was that first initial sales call. And then I had another one that day as well from somebody who was, honestly forget if it was somebody in a Facebook group or somebody in my network. And she signed up and paid me the $442. And then from there, like I said, I just started to put myself out there more and more in other groups. And it was really through networking that eventually I was able to do Facebook ads, which were super cheap at the time. We got leads for like 60 cents.
Wow.
So that was amazing to help build my list. I started to host teleclasses every single week and invite people to those. We didn't do much on Zoom at that time. And yeah, just grew from there. And really the biggest thing was getting myself into this program with all these other incredible women and learning from a coach who had done what I wanted to do. And then I started to be featured on her website and on her podcast. And she already had an audience that was built. And so I was kind of front and center with all these ideal clients who, if they couldn't afford her, then they came to me. So it was really amazing. It was really all through networking and people.
Very cool. And your coach is still around. Like, she's seen what you've done since that time, right?
Yeah. Her name is Gina DeVee.
Gina DeVee?
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Shout out to you, Gina. Maybe we'll have to have you on the broadcast. That's great. Okay. So let's talk about you. The first month, $442. You're probably like, wow, I just made money from my business. Like, this is amazing. But then in 6 months, you do something crazy. In 6 months, you go from $400 to over 6 figures. So you've replaced a full-time, amazing income from this business that you just created 6 months prior. To many people, that is unheard of. To many people, they hear that and they're like, yeah, that's a great story. She can do it, but I don't know if I could do that. So my question is, what had to change in you? What did you have to discover in order to go from where you were at the very beginning to just 6 months later, earning over 6 figures in your business? Which means, by the way, for those listening, if you're making 6 figures in your business, you're helping a lot of people, right? The more you make, that means the more people you're helping. So what had to transform there for that to happen?
It's a great question. And before I answer that, I just want to share that when I made that $442 and then the next month it was $2,000, I was not happy. And I just spent all this time on our show here talking about, I learned how to be happy, but there was still a lot of growth to happen because I was like, that's not enough. Like $442, that's nothing. And although I was only making about 30 grand a year as a matchmaker, I was like, that's, I want to make way more than that. And I also had all these people who I was following online, although it's not to the degree that it is today, but I was following all these people who were, turning their annual salaries into their monthly salaries. And so I saw what was possible and I was like, I want more. And so during the first few months, I remember getting on calls with my coach and I was like, nothing's working, nothing's happening. And looking back, as you just described, I was actually doing really well. And I was doing what a lot of people dream of doing. But in my mind, I was like, this is not enough. This is not fast enough. Mm-hmm. And so I worked with my coaches to figure out how I could ramp things up. And one of the things that I did was I started to look first at my own money mindset and the way that I was viewing money and the way I was viewing sales. Because I think this is a big issue for a lot of entrepreneurs. We get into work that we want to do because it's our passion. We want to help people. And then we realize, oh my goodness, there's a sales and marketing component. How in the world am I going to do this? And that I was clueless about. So I would get on these calls. And like I said, I was attracting a lot of different clients. There was a period of time where I had 54 calls in the span of 6 weeks. Yeah. Wow. And so it was through the Facebook ads, through networking, through my coach promoting me. And every single one of them said no to working with me. And so during that time, I was like, this is not working. What's going on? And I got on a call with my coach and we started to look at the conversation itself and the way that I was showing up. And the first issue was that I wasn't comfortable talking about money. And so if someone said to me, hey, I want to work with you, but then the next breath they were like, but I don't have the money, I would just be like, okay, no problem, bye. And that would be the end of the conversation. And so I started to really look at myself and ask myself, what does my relationship with money look like? What was I taught growing up? What are the stories that I'm telling myself on a regular basis? What am I thinking when I am on these calls? And so I started to really do that work on myself, which is one of the things I teach people, all about money mindset and reprogramming your money mindset and your money stories. And so that was really the first thing that I had to start to shift was my relationship with money and just how I interacted with people on sales calls, how I talked about money and how I thought about money.
And when did you start to see the benefits of that self-work?
So around, I'm just thinking about a calendar year. So around month 4, I ended up making $6,000. And so that allowed me to leave my job as a matchmaker and go into my business full time. And actually my boss at the time, she discovered my website without me telling her. And so that was not fun. She wasn't very happy. But I just realized if I had all the time in the world to devote to this, how much quicker would it grow? And so from there, things started to really scale. The next month was a $30,000 month. So I went from $6,000 all the way up to $30,000. And the way that I did that was, like I said, I hosted a weekly teleclass, and my coach, she told me, you're not going to talk about anything. You're not going to think about anything except for this one program. And I want you to slice the price in half because right now you're not energetically aligned with your higher price point because you're scared to talk about it now that you've had 54 rejections. And so we're going to make this super easy for you to sell. You're going to be really confident on these calls. If people don't want it, no worries. There's more people to come. And so I just had call after call after call and eventually reached that $30,000 mark and sold out the program. And so from there, I realized, okay, well, one-to-one is not scalable. So I'm going to create my first group program, which is what I did. So it was called 90 Days to $6,000 because I essentially made, I made $6,000 and a little bit over 90 days. But essentially that was the program, and sold that to a group of women who had been following me but hadn't wanted to sign up for one-to-one. And then again, just started to grow that, added in more one-to-one clients, raised my prices dramatically, started to do VIP days when I traveled to retreats and different events, and then added in another group program and so on and so forth.
Awesome. Now I just saw your post about VIP days. You got 2 more open right now. I think you have 2 VIP days open in New York. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Super cool.
So we love traveling and just, love meeting people in person and supporting them. And I love luxury hotels. So we always do things in beautiful spaces and really help people up level in every way.
Love that. That's amazing. I could ask you 500 more questions about this period of time in general. But the one last thing I'll ask you is, if you could go back to the beginning of I Heart My Life, what would you do differently knowing what you know now, if anything?
So people love this story, but one of the things they don't understand is that it's very hard to go from nothing to seven figures in 18 months in terms of the output that it requires, as well as, not everyone knows, myself included, how to manage that much money and what to do with it. Especially how old was I? 2000. Yeah, I was 29. So I would go back and tell myself, slow down, because you don't actually need to move this fast. There was a point where I had 27 one-to-one clients. I was working 8,200 hours a week. So it was intense. And I didn't need to, shoot right out of the gate in that way. It was not necessary. And although it's a great part of the story, like I said, I would just tell myself to slow down and also understand how to manage money a bit more, what to do with my money so that it grows and, comes back, instead of just investing in programs and coaches, although that did serve me. There's a level of education that I was missing that it would have been really helpful.
So as you're ramping up your income, continue to invest with coaches who will help you to fill in the skill gaps or the mindset gaps that you don't possess at those different levels and stages.
Yeah. Or, investors, people to help you manage your wealth, right? I didn't know to do that, which sounds really dumb, but I wasn't investing in real estate. I was investing in my business and myself, which definitely had an ROI, but I could have diversified a bit more.
Sure, that's fair. And again, looking back, it's so easy to say, I could have done this, I could have done that. But what you did do has led you to this moment in time right now, right?
Totally.
So I'm just also curious, was there one thing that you can mention when it comes to reprogramming your relationship with money that really just helped you the most and really helped you to flick the switch? Was it like an exercise, a strategy? What was that?
I think it was just believing that anything is possible when it comes to wealth. And like I said, I really surrounded myself intentionally with people who were doing big things financially. And I think so often we're in a group of people where everyone is the same as us. So maybe everyone's struggling or everyone has the same money beliefs. And so for me, just expanding my horizons and, being around those people or reading books where people had exploded in terms of their financial growth and just seeing real life examples and making that my new normal versus staying stuck and staying in a place where, I could only make what I make and I can only make what my salary is, and just seeing that wealth is available for all of us. And that really fed into my sales conversations. I have something I like to call my rich grandma method, which is essentially believing that everyone you're talking to on sales calls has a rich grandma, essentially an inheritance, in their corner. And that is a metaphor for a variety of different things. Maybe they have a 401k, maybe they have savings, maybe they have a parent they can borrow the money from, maybe they can sell something, maybe they have the money, but they have money blocks. And so when I approached all my conversations with this person has the money, it wasn't about getting the money from them. It was helping them see how resourceful they actually are. Mm-hmm. And if they said to me, I don't have the money for this, I would say, okay, great. Well, do you want to talk about how you can make the money or how you can find the money? And no one's going to say no to that. But only if you believe that other people are resourceful and that there's more than enough out there, are you even going to have those conversations and engage in a conversation about money and abundance, right? So I had to first see that abundance was available for me, and being around people who had a life of abundance was one of the catalysts to that.
Love that. Sales 101. Don't sell with your own wallet. If someone really wants something bad enough, they will find a way to get the money for that thing. They'll call an uncle, they'll call their rich grandma. They'll do what they need to do in order to get what it is that they want.
Yeah. And I just felt like, I just felt like that was of service to them as well. And it is, you'd much rather have a conversation with someone who believes in you and sees potential versus someone buying your story of lack, right? That you don't have it. There's plenty of people who are going to give into that and tell you, oh yeah, just, be safe. Don't spend the money. You can do it yourself. But I knew that I wanted to be a champion of people and their dreams. And that was one way to do so.
No doubt. Speaking of how to get anything you want, you have your masterclass. And by the way, guys, Emily's got the How to Get Anything You Want masterclass, and she's giving you a workbook to go through it for no cost. When you go to her website, I'll have the link below in the description. You can join the masterclass, get her framework of how to get anything that you want. You'll get the workbook for free as well. Tell us now, for the people who are listening, how do you get anything that you want? Is it a formula? Is it a structure? What does it look like?
So for me, I have a 3-part formula. It's super simple. And I honestly think that we overcomplicate this, myself included. And it really comes down to step 1 is getting clear on what you actually want. So that clarity piece. And so many of us are afraid of what we want. We've suppressed what we want for so long that it can't actually come to the surface. And so the first step is to really tune into what are my actual desires here. And I go through this in the masterclass, but basically you can do a brain dump. You can just, list it out on paper, what it is that you want, your big picture desires, your short-term goals. But we want to get clear on what it is that you actually want. What are we aiming towards? And then we want to look at, okay, well, do I actually believe that that's possible for me? Because it's one thing to have your vision board, but if you're looking at it and you're like, this is not possible for me, I can't have this, only celebrities can have this, or I have to be smarter, I have to be thinner, whatever it is, then that's an energetic mismatch. And you're going to set yourself up for failure because you don't actually believe it's possible. So why would you do it? So I always think about online dating. I believed that great love was possible for me. I had parents who they've been together since they were 15. They've been married forever. And so I saw a positive example of what was possible. So I put myself out there. I was a serial online dater. I was looking for love. But had I not believed that it was possible for me, of course, I wouldn't have taken that step. And it's the same thing with anything you want or anything you want to create. You have to believe that it's possible. Now, I'm not saying that every single day you have to wake up with 100% belief, but you do have to have enough belief to move on to step 3, which is taking consistent action. So I have a coach, David Nagel. I worked with him previously. He talks about how most people are taking the pot on and off the stove. And we all know for trying to boil water, you got to keep it on the stove in order for it to heat up. But we're like, oh, I want this thing. So I'm going to take one step forward. Then, oh no, I can't do it. It's not possible for me. So I stop. Right. And we're going back and forth. And so taking that consistent action on behalf of what you want and continuing to show up, even when the challenges arise or the person you meet on the date isn't who you thought they would be. Or like when I met my husband, I had 2 dates that day. Like I was really throwing myself into a lot of action.
Yeah.
And so are you consistent in the vision? Are you continuing to show up and take that action? Or are you dabbling, right? Like, what is your energy like? Are you dipping your toe in the water? Are you going all in? And so I really think that those 3 things, again, super simple, but there's a lot of stuff to uncover there that we can all, do. I have the masterclass, or I can help you directly. We can all do to start to create the life that we really love. And there's a reason why our tagline is create a life better than your dreams, because we believe that your mind only takes you so far. And what you're visioning right now is actually a small portion of what you're actually capable of. And so what you are capable of is far better than anything you could think of now, but you're only going to get that clarity and get in momentum if you start today and you start taking that action. And I really believe that your desires are truth. Your desires are you and your fullest expression. For some people, that's living in London. For some people, it's starting a business. For other people, it's speaking on stage. But we really owe it to ourselves to first get clear on that. And then that helps to help the rest unfold.
Love that. So that 3-step process, again, is get clear on what you want. Do you believe it's possible? And in regards to that, if you don't believe it's possible, who can you look to in your life, or in, like what you said earlier, who can you look to or read about in books who have accomplished what it is you want to accomplish? Can you get yourself in the same room or environment as those people in order to build up that belief? And then step 3 is take consistent daily action in that direction.
Yeah. And it all feeds into each other, because when we're taking the action, sometimes we are tempted to take action based on fear. Like, oh, I'm going to turn this thing off because it's not working right now. Like whether it's a program you're launching or whatever, excuse me. And the true desire is I want to keep doing this. And so I'm going to keep tweaking it until I get the right recipe and I get the people in. So oftentimes with action, we have to come back to, okay, well, what is the desire? What is the action in alignment with the desire instead of the fear? Because so many people are operating from a place place of fear, as we said, and then they're wondering why they don't have the life that they want. Well, it's because you took the job because it was safe, but you didn't really want it. You stayed in your hometown, even though you wanted to move far away because it was what everyone does, right? And so we wonder why we don't have the life that we want. But when we look back at our past decision making, it wasn't in alignment with our desires. It was in alignment with fear or scarcity.
For sure. Let's talk to the woman or the person who made the safe decision. They're working a full-time job. They're working 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. They have a desire for more. They want to help people. They want to build their own business, maybe. What advice would you give this person to help them focus on what's important in order to make that happen? They got a lot going on. How do they know what to focus on in order to build that dream?
So I think it's important to understand what your goal actually is. So that's why clarity is so powerful, and it's the first step. So let's get clear. Is it build the business? What is it? What's the thing that you actually want? And then we can look at, okay, well, how do we make it happen? And you might not have that answer, which is why it's so powerful that we have YouTube at our fingertips. We have courses, we have classes. The answer is always there. And I always say that if the desire is there, then the potential for the thing to happen, it also exists. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think, oh, I want this thing, but that's not possible. But when you pair the two and you recognize that actually you wouldn't have the desire unless the potential was also there, then it's like, okay, no problem. So that's my desire. Now I just need to figure out the how in terms of making it happen. So the first step is really, what is that actual desire? And then take a look at, okay, so who can help me get there faster? Or what do I need to learn? What are the skill sets that are going to bridge the gap for me? And oftentimes we think, well, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. If you put that to the side and you believed you had all the time and you have all the money, what steps would you take? Okay. Because we don't want that fear to get in the way. So we put those two things to the side, and that will help you step into an abundant mindset right away. And I think most people don't understand they have that power. You can truly shift your mindset just like that. Just put that stuff to the side. We don't even need to process it. So if you had all the time, okay, well, I'd probably start with this masterclass, or I'd probably start watching this YouTuber who I know is an expert in that. Great. Put it on your calendar, 1 hour a week. You're moving forward. And then we go from there and start to add on and get even clearer. Again, clarity comes from engagement, not from thinking about it. And when we get into that mindset and start to engage with our life, and also recognize that we probably won't know the how this second, it's going to have to reveal itself to us, then we give ourselves permission to go into that massive exploration like we talked about earlier.
And that's the key phrase. No one else is going to give you permission, because you don't need their permission. You have to be the one to give yourself permission, right? And if you gave yourself permission today to do what it is that you wanted to do, what would you do differently today, knowing that you had that express permission in order to make that happen? So powerful.
Yeah.
I have 2 rapid fire questions for you, but before that, everybody go to the link in the description. Go check out Emily's How to Get Anything You Want masterclass. You'll get the free workbook as well. And go through that and go through those 3 steps where she's going to go deep into each one to really break it down. And what will people have by the end of that masterclass when they go through it?
Well, at the very least, you'll have clarity on what it is you actually want, because I ask you a series of powerful questions, and I also give you 3 ways to get clarity. I shared 1 here today. The other 2 will be in the masterclass, because I know not everyone is like, oh, I'm just going to write a brain dump or create my vision board. There's other ways that you can get clear on what you want, especially for those of you who have it really buried below the surface. So you'll get clear on what you want. You'll start to see where you might have limiting beliefs around those things and understand how to start transforming that. And then you'll get clear on your action step, at least the first step that you can take to move forward towards that vision.
That sounds amazing. You heard it here, guys. Go down there, check it out. It's right on her website. Links are in the description. 2 rapid fire questions. Someone comes to you and says, Emily, you can only give your daughter 1 life lesson. And from the age of now to she's old and gray, she'll have this 1 lesson from you that you learned through your life that you know is valuable for her. What would that 1 life lesson be that you'd want to instill in her?
I would say trust, and to understand that everything is happening for you. And, that requires a level of trust. There's this beautiful book by Ian Van Zant called Trust, and it talks about the 4 different levels of trust. So trust in life, trust in self, trust in God, and trust in others. And I think it's a muscle that all of us get to develop further in our lifetimes because it's not something that's natural for most of us, myself included. So it would be to just trust that everything's unfolding as it's meant to.
Love that answer. I didn't expect that. That's very cool. Second question. Your dad's a different kind of entrepreneur. Like you said, he's around like the suit and tie entrepreneurs. What is the one entrepreneurship lesson that comes to mind when you think of what your dad taught you about business?
Yeah, it's interesting because those were the types of coaches that he worked with, but he was in the construction space. And so in 2008, he lost everything. And so I would say, that anything is possible and you can rebuild. He's launched 2 businesses since then and, doing incredibly well and is super supportive of us. And so I would say that, you can do anything and you can get back up and you can make it happen regardless of what your past circumstances or even what your current circumstance is. I always say your current reality is not an indication of what's possible and meant for you. And so if someone is struggling right now and whatever that means for them, that's just your current reality. Anything you desire is meant for you and possible. We just need to take that action towards that new vision.
Very cool. Very inspirational. This whole conversation was inspirational, and it's real and it's practical and it's grounded in the emotions and the thoughts that a lot of people are having. And you've lived them and we continue to live them. We're never past these things, but now you have developed a toolbox that if you're feeling this way or not feeling a way that you want to, you're like, okay, let's go to the toolbox. What can I use here in order to feel the way that I want to feel, in order to get what it is that I want to get? And the next tool that you guys can add to your toolbox is How to Get Anything You Want. Emily's masterclass and the workbook. Links are in the description to go check that out. Emily, for those who want to follow you, where are the best places for people to follow you and reach out?
Yeah, so the website is great, iheartmylife.com or emilywilliams.com. And then I'm on Instagram, so at Emily Williams. And then I have my podcast, so we'll be starting a new season of that. It's called the I Heart My Life Show.
Cool. And you've got over 300 episodes of your podcast too. Yep. So you've got a lot of stuff already there for people. Your Instagram's great. Go check her out, guys. And be sure to go through her masterclass as well. Emily, this is amazing. I'm really glad that James and I had a conversation. And again, everything, like what you said, everything happens for you, right? That happened. And this happened because of that. And all of this happened because you decided to push through your fear and make the move and look at what has resulted. I mean, thousands and thousands of people you've helped, a marriage, a family, so many beautiful things. So thank you for inspiring me. And I know that you've inspired everyone listening as well. So this was a real pleasure.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
This was an awesome conversation, guys. If you haven't already listened and watched the episode with James, I'm going to put the link to that conversation below as well. It happened back in February, and it was all about peak performance. It was about similar things, but from a different perspective and from a different story. And I hope that you loved this conversation as well. If you did love it, which I'm sure you did, then to dive deeper into those 3 steps that Emily talked about earlier about how to get everything you want, be sure to go through her masterclass. The link is in the description. It doesn't cost you a thing. You'll enter your email. You'll get the workbook. You'll have everything you need in order to go from where you are now to acquiring clarity. And even if you're kind of clear on what it is you want, this is going to help you really dial in on that and maybe help you understand the 3rd step of that process, which is what is the action I can take today in order to make forward progress towards that goal. Because like Emily said, you can take the pot off the boiler, but every time you put it back on, the water's got to take that time to boil again. So what would happen if you kept the pot in the boiler? What would happen if you took consistent action? What would happen if you did acquire and get what it is that you wanted? What would your life look like? It's possible. Be sure to share this episode with just one other person if you found value in it. Thank you for being the best part of the Be Better team. Thank you for watching and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.